This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Colette. Colette has been the leader in the group travel industry since 1918. With more than 170 expertly curated tours and 5 distinct travel styles from small groups to cruising and beyond, there's a tour to fit your group's unique needs. Plus, Colette makes it easy to set up and manage your group travel program, providing you with local support, marketing materials, and more. Led by local experts in the area, every detail is taken care of, meaning your group just has to pack their bags and go. Learn more at gocollette.com/groups. Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Gather and Go, the podcast that helps you plan, promote, and lead better trips. I'm Brian Jewell. I am your host, and I am delighted that you're spending some of your time with me today. And as always, our promise to you is that we're going to do everything we can to make that investment of your time worth your while. Now, today we're going to do that through a really fascinating conversation with Anna Cashman, who is a data and marketing expert for the online travel agency GetYourGuide. Now, you may be thinking, Brian, my business is not listed on an OTA. We're not the kind of business that is listed on an OTA. Why does Anna have anything to say to me? Well, let me tell you, Anna has gathered so much data and crunched the numbers from her platform and a lot of other data sources out there. And she's got some really insightful trends and economic information and marketing insights to share, no matter where you're positioned in the group travel ecosystem. So in this conversation, you're going to hear some of the economic trends that are impacting your customers' travel decisions. Anna's going to tell us about the super spenders who are making waves in tourism. And she's going to share how you can position your brand to resonate with today's value-based travelers. This is all such excellent and helpful information. I can't wait for you to hear it. First, though, let's start with some travel news you may have missed. Hyatt Hotels is launching a new mid-market hotel brand. Hyatt has announced the launch of Hyatt Select, which it is describing as an upper mid-scale brand. The new brand is being positioned as an option for cost-conscious transient travelers, as opposed to meeting and convention attendees, in small or medium cities where there are no other Hyatt-branded hotels. It will feature both new builds and converted properties ranging in size from 70 to 200 rooms. The new hotels are being conceptualized as a step down in price from Hyatt Place, which is seen as an upscale limited service brand. Hyatt said the new Hyatt Select hotels will feature a complimentary breakfast with hot and cold items, as well as a 24/7 grab-and-go market. Travelers can expect guest rooms with streamlined, modern decor and free high-speed internet. The Hyatt Select brand will likely compete with Hampton Inn, Holiday Inn Express, and Fairfield, all limited service hotels that are popular with group travelers. Well, now it's time for the road tips segment of our show. This is the part of every episode where we dig into our bag of travel knowledge from decades on the road and bring you tips to make your next trip less stressful and more successful. Now, about 6 months ago, I shared with you guys a little bit of a story of a trip I took with some friends last summer that ended up being kind of disappointing. I gathered with some friends from around the country, and we met in a very popular destination that gets a lot of tourism traffic. And when we went out and about to see things and do things in that city, I was shocked. I mean, shocked by how crowded it was. It was much more crowded than I remembered it. And the crowds were so thick that it really negatively impacted the trip. Now, there are destinations like this around the US and indeed around the world that are grappling with problems of overtourism. Overtourism is a big issue we talk about in tourism quite a lot these days. And what I have come to learn is that overtourism is not really a universal problem. There are only a few destinations on Earth that truly have more visitors that they can handle. What I've discovered is that most overtourism problems really boil down to too many people trying to access the same resources at the same time. And you are most likely to encounter a crowd or walk into an overtourism situation if you make the mistakes that, frankly, my friends and I made last summer on this trip. But if you avoid the kind of beginner mistakes we made, you're likely to avoid the problem of overtourism. And you can take your groups to visit some of the best destinations in the US or anywhere around the globe without having to worry about crowding. So today I'm going to give you 4 quick tips on how to avoid overtourism on your next trip. Number 1 is to visit during a shoulder season. Now, you probably already know this, and you may be thinking, Brian, if you and your friends went to a popular destination in the middle of the summer, well, you had it coming. And you would be absolutely right. We made the mistake of visiting on a weekend during peak summer travel season. No wonder we encountered a big crowd. You can do wonders for your groups by planning trips during shoulder season when it's not their peak travel season, but the weather is still pleasant. You're probably going to get better rates that way, and you're almost certainly likely to encounter smaller crowds when you visit during shoulder season. A related idea, when you're going to a specific site or attraction in a city that is known for being a tourist landmark, is to come either early or late. So, maybe you visit that landmark very first thing in the morning. You put together some kind of breakfast experience there that happens at, 7 or 8 a.m. Or on the flip side, you come later. You come for a sunset experience. Maybe you have a dinner. Maybe there's some sort of evening or nighttime experience you can do at that site. Now, most casual tourists are going to be there between the hours of, 9 or 10 a.m. and 4 or 5 p.m. So if you can get there with your group before or after that, you're likely to have a much less crowded experience. Again, this was a mistake my friends and I made on that trip last year. We hit a popular part of town at the height of not only the tourist season, but also the height of the day when everyone else wanted to be there too. And it was a madhouse. That was a mistake on our part. Now, here's something else that I would recommend to you. If you are visiting a highly popular destination and you want to avoid the crowds, let me encourage you to intentionally venture into some less traveled neighborhoods. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't see the most important sites in the city, but maybe you go into those less traveled neighborhoods during the heat of the day or the peak parts of the day where people are out sightseeing. This is beneficial in a number of ways. Number 1, it gets you away from the crowds. Number 2, gives you a chance to expose your travelers to the authentic side of a city or destination. If you do some work ahead of time with a CVB or a tour operator partner to help identify the experiences and attractions and activities in those lesser visited neighborhoods, you're going to find that your travelers love them. You're having a more authentic, probably more affordable experience, and you are not dealing with crowds. And finally, the 4th tip would be to find an alternative destination or activity that provides a lot of the same value, maybe some of the same experience for your travelers, without necessarily having to go to the most recognized place in the country or on the planet for that one kind of activity. So, for instance, there is great history and architecture throughout Europe. You don't have to go to Paris for that necessarily. You can find it in Poland. There is great music throughout the American South. You don't necessarily have to go to one of the big music hotspots to find it. You can probably find some excellent and authentic performers in pretty much any southern destination you're visiting without having to go to one of the big 3 or 4. So avoid the mistakes that I made with my friends last year. Don't go to the big hotspots at the same time everyone else is going. Instead, find some alternative places to visit, venture into some less traveled neighborhoods. When you do go to those hotspots, come early, go late, visit during shoulder season. I promise you're going to love it. Your travelers are going to love it too. And that is your road tip of the week. Now, before we move on, I want to take a minute to share just a little bit of news from us. And one of the things that we do every year in our magazine, The Group Travel Leader, is we publish an annual guide to the U.S. Civil Rights Trail. This comes out in the March issue of the Group Travel Leader. It is available right now. If you subscribe to the magazine in print, you should be seeing that show up in your mailbox any day now. But even if you don't subscribe to the magazine in print, we would love for you to check out the 2025 U.S. Civil Rights Trail Travel Guide. If you're not familiar with the U.S. Civil Rights Trail, this is an organization that showcases dozens of places around the country that commemorate both major civil rights events and some of the unsung heroes of the civil rights movement. Now, if you open the Group Travel Leader's March issue, or if you go to grouptravelleader.com/civil rights, you're going to find brand new articles about new sites that have recently joined the trail. You're going to read about incredible visitor experiences. You're going to meet some of the people behind the stories at important civil rights sites. Learn about some of the really, really cool civil rights artwork all around the country. And you can read about museums where you'll get to see incredible objects and artifacts that connect you to leaders and change makers in the civil rights movement. Now, this is all available absolutely free on our website at grouptravelleader.com/civil rights. Don't worry, I will pop that URL into the show notes so you can find it easily. Check it out and start thinking about how you can plan a trip for your group to discover the incredible history of the civil rights movement in the United States. You'll be glad you did. Well, it's just about time for us to get into our featured conversation with Anna Cashman. As we get ready to do that, let me remind you that you can find a wrap-up of some of the most important things Anna and I talked about in the show notes for this episode. In fact, you can find a summary of the most important points from any of our podcast episodes in the show notes for that episode, or by visiting grouptravelleader.com/podcast. It is all there for you. Now, after the interview, I'm going to come back with a few thoughts wrapping up some of the points that Anna mentioned that I think are especially relevant to us today. And I hope you will stick around through the end of that wrap up, because after we're done, I'm going to share some thoughts about the biggest challenge facing group travel planners today. That's going to be the subject of the Hot Minute. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back with Anna Cashman. All right, everybody, I want to take a minute to tell you about our sponsor, Colette. Because Colette's tours are designed by travelers for travelers, your group will visit must-see sites like La Sagrada Familia and the crown jewels of Scotland. But they'll also get to know the people of their destination, like truffle hunters, pearl divers, and cheesemakers. Plus, Colette makes filling and promoting your tour easy. There's no deposit or minimum group size required, so your booking is totally risk-free. Colette also provides free marketing materials to help promote the tour to your community with the help of your own local business development manager, who can answer any questions you may have. Now, these are just a few reasons to partner with Colette for your group travel program. Visit gocolette.com/groups to get started. All right, everybody. My guest today is an expert in tourism marketing and brand building who specializes in combining insights and market data with storytelling. She has run campaigns for some of the biggest names in the travel industry, from Disneyland to the Vatican, and for destinations from California to Kyoto. She's now the head of B2B brand and insights for GetYourGuide and is the author of the company's biannual market research report, The Travel Experiences Trend Tracker. Anna Cashman, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much, Brian, for having me.
I'm super excited to have you here. I always enjoy talking to people who love numbers, because I love numbers. I love data. I love the stories they tell. And I think tourism professionals stand to benefit so much from hearing these stories. So I know that you are just full of great information for them. Before we get into data, though, for people who aren't super familiar with GetYourGuide, can you kind of explain what that platform is, how people use it both on the buyer side and the seller side?
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to test my pitch skills. In a nutshell, GetYourGuide is a two-sided marketplace. We focus exclusively on tours, attractions, travel activities. And so we connect thousands of operators, no matter what kind of activity they're producing or offering, with millions of engaged travelers all around the world. So to date, we've sold 180 million tickets and counting.
Wow.
We have a really big, large and loyal customer base. We translate in dozens of languages. And we're one of the world's largest online travel agencies. So for many suppliers out there, we're really a key part of their distribution strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're just starting, your own tour company, let's say in your hometown, getting people to come directly to your website is a very heavy lift. But listing on a marketplace that people are already coming to can be a real game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a fragmented market, right? Because when travelers are from everywhere and they look to go everywhere and they look at all types of and manner of experiences, and that changes a lot depending on sort of who they are, where they're going, and we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
And so OTAs like Get Your Guide is one way for them to sort of consolidate part of their research, and a way for suppliers to really sort of get eyeballs on their activities.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of your big projects is the Travel Experience Trend Tracker. You put out a new version of it last fall. I'm curious, what were some of the questions you set out to answer with that project? And what were some of the big answers you got, the key takeaways from it?
Yeah, so it was a pretty ambitious piece of research, I have to say. So the Travel Experience Trend Tracker it's biannual research, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put this together expressly for supply partners. We're currently putting together our fifth wave, actually. But each report focuses on a slightly different topic. And so we change it so that over time because we use the data ourselves too. It's not just stuff that we create for supply partners. This is research that we also use to inform our own strategy.
Yeah.
So that over time, by changing the topic, we can build a really robust and deep and nuanced understanding of the experiences landscape and of travelers and what they need with regards to experiences specifically. So last wave was all about how people decide what experiences to do, right? That's a really big question. One thing that I learned from actually arrival data again and speaking with operators myself at trade shows and conferences and stuff was, they really want to understand marketing, right? Marketing strategy is a really big question on their lips, and how to create a winning marketing strategy.
Yeah.
And so that means questions like who to target, where should I target them, what do they need to do in order to resonate with them at the moments that they're most receptive, right?
Yeah.
And so the research that we did last wave was really about that, like giving supply partners a better idea about who to target when and with what type of messaging.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so important because especially thinking about maybe the smaller companies, the small business owners, solopreneurs, mom and pops that are in the experiences and tour space, resources are limited and time is limited. And it is so easy to completely waste funds on marketing. Try whatever some guru online is telling you is the next big thing, and it doesn't work for you. And you've just spent $1,000, $10,000, whatever it is. And it doesn't get you any results. So I love this focus on saying, okay, well, what do the numbers actually tell us, and not what's popular, what's trending necessarily. So
maybe to add to that too, sorry to interrupt, but I think, marketing is a costly exercise, and it requires iteration and testing over a long period of time. It's not something that you can do flash in the pan stuff with because that won't generate long-term results.
Yeah.
But I think if you've got the fundamental information, you can start to test more effectively and more efficiently. So you're minimizing waste. And I think that's really key, especially if, like you mentioned, if you're a smaller operator, you're wearing many, many hats.
Right.
You don't have a lot of time to work it out by yourself. Having this foundational knowledge is absolutely key.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you released a wave last fall. One of the things that caught my eye in the results as I was reading through, and as I've heard you speak on this, you said there was a slight decline in overall travel spending last year. I wonder if you have any ideas, either from the data or just from conversations, what may have caused that?
Yeah. Look, Brian, I think it's simple, right? The macroeconomic climate last year was a bit garbage. Um, there was a contraction. We saw a contraction of around 2% in spending on travel overall, right? And in the research that we took was in July 2024, so July 2024 versus 2023. It affected all travel verticals, from online travel agencies to accommodation to flights and experiences as a whole. So everyone really was impacted. And I think, like I said, the reality was it was just the macroeconomic climate was recessionary, and people were less inclined to spend. What we did also find, though, and I think this is really important, right? Because, and this is true of any type of research and data that you're doing, you have to zoom in, but you also need the context, and you need to zoom out in order to understand sort of the situational trend. So if you zoom out, the story doesn't actually look so grim. We've all heard this well-trodden maxim for many years now of like, people want experiences over things. People are choosing to experience the world rather than buying more stuff. We can actually see that in spending data, which I think is pretty insane. Like, it's pretty impressive. So if you look at the growth of different spending categories, namely experiences versus goods or versus stuff, experiences overall, including travel, have been far more resilient, even in the recessionary environment last year. So more than, for example, goods like electronics or home improvement or beauty, this kind of thing. The only other more resilient spending bucket was essentials. So housing and groceries, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that actually tells quite a positive story. The fact that, yes, experiences and travel was down, but it was less down than everything else.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to keep in mind. So the future is bright.
I know from my personal experience, going over my family's budget, going to the grocery store, trying to plan travel, we're sitting here and watching prices go up and up and up and up. And we're thinking, we got to make some hard decisions here. So do you think it was just price sensitivity that got people in that sort of recessionary mindset?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, that reality, that inflation was true everywhere, right? My partner's actually from the States. And so we traveled to the States a couple of times last year. And a lot of the conversations that we had around the dinner table were how much restaurant prices rose in the past year, how much the grocery bill was coming to. So people were in a pinch. And when you couple that with the fact that salaries aren't increasing at proportionate levels, it puts people under strain.
Yeah. So were you able to gather any sort of psychographic data or insights into why the experience sector is drawing people even when they're having to cut back in other elements of travel or other elements of their lives? What is it about experiences that, has people willing to open their wallets even when things feel lean?
I think there are a couple of different factors here. So the first thing I'll say is that there are certain people that are driving that trend. We'll dub them super spenders, or at least we did in the report. So there are people spending proportionately more versus others. And they're people, therefore, who are prioritizing travel and experiences over other people and other categories. I think it was amplified too by the fact that the pandemic isn't that far away in people's hearts and minds.
Yeah.
And so people for those people who have a predilection or a disposition to spend more on those types of things, they sort of came back with a vengeance because they were starved of experiences for so long that they wanted them again.
Yeah.
Now, this portion of people who tend to spend more on experiences, they're not the minority. Actually, they are the majority. They're around 60% of the population.
Okay.
And we internally call them explorers because they are not the quote unquote average tourist. They really want to get in. They really want to get into a destination. They want to experience things at life as much as possible. They want to connect with the world, with a destination, with others, with themselves. And travel is a really, really important way for them to do that. And so, if you like, it sort of fulfills a higher purpose in life, right? I think you can think about explorers, and you used the word, I think, like psychographics. These people aren't defined by age, sex, location, ethnic background.
Yeah.
Because people who want to connect with the world are everywhere, from all walks of life. And so rather than defining them by demographics, age, sex, location, they're really defined by psychographics.
Yeah.
And it's a set of values that really defines them and brings them together.
Yeah. I love that. I have so many questions about the explorers or the super spenders, because that is a big, rich target for tourism entrepreneurs. Those are the people that you want to be reaching. Do you have a sense for where folks like this are going for travel information or inspiration today? Or is it really kind of everywhere still?
Yeah, honestly, inshore is everywhere. So to paint maybe a bit more of a picture, what are specifically the values that set this group apart? They are travel maximizers. They want to experience something that is unique and authentic. They want to go away. They want to eat new things. They want to see new things. They want to feel new things. And they want to come back feeling rebooted. And travel experiences are the vehicle to helping them experience those things.
Yeah.
And that means that vacations and those experiences that they take are really important to them. They're precious, right? We don't have unlimited time for vacations throughout the year. So they want to get it right.
Yeah.
And if it becomes an emotional decision, you invest time and energy into it. And you don't just look at one place because you want to be sure you're making the right decision.
Yeah.
So that's why, they look everywhere. And honestly, that won't change. They're very discerning consumers. They want to compare. They want to contrast. They want to make sure that they're collecting as much information as possible. So when it comes to booking, they feel confident that they're making the right choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that this is not necessarily the same segment as the quote unquote luxury segment? They're not necessarily always going to be the top spenders, but they're looking for a specific kind of travel experience that really reinforces those values you're talking about.
I think it's an interesting question. I think you can think about it more like a Venn diagram. I think there are going to be some luxury travelers who are more discerning and who are looking for deeper connections. And then there are going to be some luxury travelers who are just looking to sort of sit back and have the details taken care of themselves.
Yeah.
Because maybe one, they can afford to, but also because maybe they're not as invested in the connection piece as what others are. So I think it's not, one or the other. I think there's a bit of overlap. I think it just comes down to, so a luxury traveler will naturally have more higher means and more income at their disposal. And that might then ultimately determine the type of tour they take or the price point that they go for. But they will ultimately be looking for similar things if they are an explorer, which is, will this experience or will this tour, will this activity show me something different? Will it be memorable? Will it be authentic? Will I feel immersed in my destination?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. How would you recommend that tour sellers, understanding this value set, tailor either the way they put their products together or the way they message or the way they market to appeal to those explorers and communicate, hey, those values that are driving you to tourism, we share those values and we're going to deliver on those values if you travel with us?
So there are a lot of things to think about. I think the one golden rule is, given that explorers are very involved in research. In fact, their trip starts not when they get on the plane or not when they get in the car through their road trip. It starts when they've decided to take a trip, right?
Yeah.
That planning period, that inspiration period is part of their vacation. It's emotional and they're looking at a number of different resources. So it is critical, one, to be everywhere. To target these people, you need to be everywhere. You need to make sure that you're making it on their itinerary that they're clocking you, so that when it comes later down the line, that when they're ready to make a purchasing decision, you're on the list.
Mm.
And so that means making sure that you are showing up on OTAs. This cohort, by the way, do proportionally use OTAs, online travel agencies like GetYourGuide, more than other travelers, because they understand it as, you know, a relevant and important resource. So be present on OTAs. Make sure that you're all over search, so all over Google and Bing, actually, for that matter. Make sure you're using partner sites or other brands to help prop up your own message. So, you know, one of the things that we invest and spend a lot of time on is making sure that we have strategic brand partnerships, working with Amex, for example, and hotel brands and accommodation brands and flight brands or airlines, because they're all places that explorers will go to research their trips. And then finally, of course, you know, those last important pieces like social media, be across all social media platforms. It's not just Facebook and Instagram, it's also TikTok and YouTube. Using influencers, using affiliate partners, using bloggers to share your message. All of this stuff is really important. And then the second primary golden rule is to make sure that the experience that you're providing is immersive, that it shows your destination in a new light, and that it's a little bit different to everything else out there. So how might you, I suppose the question that I would then pose is, what aspect of your tour or experience is unique and compelling and shows your destination in a way that no one else does? I think that's really key. And then making sure that you're communicating that across all of your marketing channels.
Yeah, that's great advice. So it seems to me that when you're selling against competitors, there's always a temptation to sell on price, which, you know, I believe creates a race to the bottom and all sorts of issues. Would it be fair to say that these kinds of explorers, the super spenders, aren't necessarily shopping for the lowest price, but that what they really want to see is that you're providing, again, that value alignment with them. They want to see that more than they want to see that you know your experience is $50 or $100 less than a competitor's.
Yeah. I could not agree more with that statement. I think it's a losing game to play like a race to the bottom, like and just to compete on price.
Yeah.
I mean, you use the word value. I think that's critical, right? Yes, there is. So there is price sensitivity, but insofar as, is it worth my time and money? But that comes down to a value question. And if you can ensure that you're providing something of very high value, then actually people are prepared to pay more for it, because vacation time is precious, and because people would rather spend a little bit more money on doing an experience that they will remember forever versus one that they won't.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, you know, so going back to the research that we did and answering more of those sort of questions like, what makes an explorer choose one activity over another? There are so many factors that play into this question, right? And a lot of those factors, unfortunately, we will never, ever be able to control. For example, what is the weather like? How much time do I have in my destination? Do I have 2 days or 5 days? Has my 4-year-old just thrown a tantrum? Do I have enormous do I have dinner plans tonight, and therefore a food tour at this moment doesn't make sense, right? These are things that no experienced creator or operator will be able to control. There are some things, however, that do really, really influence the decision-making process. And I think all operators would do well to sort of consider them when it comes to their product design, but also marketing strategy, because you can have one product and market it in different ways. And to your point, if you're really addressing the key user needs, then you can charge more for it, right? Because you're tapping into something that they really want.
Yeah.
The three things that define what a consumer will choose to do at a given moment, one, to a degree, is maybe demographics.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, Europeans are more inclined to do a walking tour than Americans.
Yeah.
That's what the data says so far. Europeans like to walk more.
Right.
A French consumer, for example, is more predisposed to booking sort of cultural, heritage, artistic tours than other cohorts. Not to say that there are others that don't.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also not to say that if you're not a walking tour in a museum, then you're not interesting for French consumers. That's also not the case. But thinking about what different consumers think about and what they need can help you shape your messaging and can help you think about how you bundle potentially with other operators or where you advertise in order to get those customers to think about you.
Yeah.
That's one thing. So where they're from. Second thing is who they're with, right? Think about it. Like if you're traveling with, your two kids, and versus if you're traveling with your partner and it's just the two of you on a romantic getaway, the types of things that you do are going to be really, really different. Like,
very different.
Would I book a day trip in Napa Valley for like wine tasting for the whole day with my two kids in tow? Probably not.
Right.
Am I more inclined to book a theme park? Maybe, right? Because it keeps the kids occupied. And so thinking about that and then making sure that your marketing assets sort of reflect the people that you're trying to talk to is really key. And then the last one is, where they're going. So are they traveling internationally? Are they traveling domestically? Are they traveling locally? And so international travelers are going to be looking for slightly different things compared to domestic travelers or local travelers. And so thinking about how you're talking to those people, are you speaking to them in the right language? Are you highlighting sort of the must-sees, or are you highlighting the things for second, third-time visitors? All of this stuff is really critical. And so I think that's a really good way of thinking about marketing strategy and how to influence the product strategy too.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there opportunities for multi-day tour operators, traditional, tour operators who might be taking, 40, 50 people at a time off on a 5 or 7 day tour, opportunities to, number one, leverage some of these insights, to boost their business. Number two, to work with Get Your Guide in the way they market their business?
So the answer is yes, soon.
Okay.
It's not even, I couldn't say it's even hot off the press at this point because we haven't actually officially announced it. So maybe you're getting a tiny bit of a scoop. That's okay. It's to come. So one thing that we have noticed is the increase in search queries and in desires for multi-day trips. People are looking for experience packages, so multiple experiences that enable them to really experience a destination fully, wholly. And so this is something that we're currently building out. It's a really big piece of work, as you might imagine, because it needs to change on both sides of the marketplace. So on the supplier side in the back end, and also for the consumer and how they're browsing and how they're getting the information. It's very, very different to display information for a multi-day tour as it is to sort of a 2-hour activity.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of work happening in the background, but this is something that we hope to launch, this year and not too far away. I can't give you an exact date.
So for tour and experience operators that want to learn more about Get Your Guide, maybe even join the platform, work with you guys, learn from some of this data, how are the different ways they can go about doing that, connect with the company or connect with you?
Yeah. So the first thing I'd recommend is to go to getyourguide.com and just get a feel for what the platform is like. So pick a destination internationally or locally and just have a look at what we have online and see and get a feel for how we try to engage with the customer. And then I'd also encourage everyone to go to getyourguide.supply And there's some information about what it means to join Get Your Guide. I will also, if you'd like, share a special URL for some commission-free bookings for new joiners as a little bonus. And the other thing is, if you're looking for information on the most recent trend tracker or any of the trend trackers before, so there's a bunch of stuff. We've got information about how people make decisions about where to go, booking trends post-COVID and what people are really looking for now when they book. All of that is available on our Growth Hub. So again, that's getyourguide.supply/growth-hub. But they'll find it on the start side.
Yeah, excellent. I would also encourage people to go find you on LinkedIn and connect with you. Anna's a great follow. You get to learn about all the stuff she's learning about and see some of the cool places she's going. So definitely take advantage of all those resources.
Yeah, please do. I post all of the research that I obviously produce for Get Your Guide, and occasionally there's also some other, like this podcast I'll be posting, but some other meetups and other articles and stuff that we share. So
yeah, fantastic.
Do give me a follow.
All right. Well, before I let you go, we have some questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So no pressure. When you book travel, are you going to book a window seat or an aisle seat?
Yeah, I'm going to be such an annoying guest. It depends. If it's a short flight, it's an aisle seat. If it's a long flight, it's a window seat.
Do you like to sleep on the window on the long flights? Is that the...
I try to.
Yeah.
Very, very rarely does that work. But
I know, right? When I see somebody really asleep on a long haul flight, I'm so jealous.
How do you do it?
Tell me your secrets, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So what's one thing in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
Over-ear headphones with the cord.
Really? Old school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm one of these people who just never has a charger or never finds the right, whatever. And
yeah. So if you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next?
Ooh, I think South Korea has been on my list for a very, very long time. So South Korea.
Yeah, I love that. So last question, what is one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Oh, what a great question. So I was in Oaxaca in Mexico, Oaxaca City.
Yeah.
And I did this really, really incredible food tour. I mean, this woman she was from there. She loved food with all of her heart and soul. Like every cell in her body just, radiated joy for food and specifically Oaxacan food.
Yeah.
And she took us to this one restaurant where they had, it was called Stone Soup. And it was made, we watched it being made. It was really incredible. And it can only be made there. So they take stones from this local river. They can only be those stones, and they heat them up in this huge furnace. And they put in broth and raw vegetables and raw seafood, and they drop one of these scalding stones into the soup, and it cooks immediately. And just to see that happen, to know that that you can only get it in that place, and explain the significance of that dish was really, really special. I'm also like a bit of a foodie. I'm a bit of a food snob, actually, and so that for me was a really special thing that I wish I could show everyone I love.
Yeah, how wonderful. Well, I can't imagine a better thing to share with people you love. Anna, thanks so much for joining us. It's been wonderful to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Brian.
Well, I sure hope you enjoyed that conversation with Anna as much as I did. And I want to fill you in on the details of the special offer Anna mentioned toward the end of our conversation. She and the folks at Get Your Guide have put together an opportunity for 15 commission-free bookings if you sign up via a special link. That's right. You can list your experience or tours on Get Your Guide and get 15 free bookings by registering at getyourguide.supply/join/gathergo. I know that's a mouthful, so I'm going to put the link in the show notes. I would encourage you to click on it, take advantage of that offer, get to know the platform, and see how it might benefit your company or organization. Now, I got to tell you, Anna had so much good stuff to say. I wasn't able to include all of our conversation here in the podcast. But the good news is that the entire interview is available on our YouTube channel. That's right. You can watch Anna and I discuss these topics and more when you go to YouTube and search for Gather and Go, or when you watch the video embedded on the show notes page for this episode. When you watch this interview, you're going to hear everything you heard in the podcast, plus some exclusive information that's only in the video. Anna's going to share how GetYourGuide gathers data on and off its platforms. And you're going to hear some really interesting thoughts about why consumers are spending like we're in a recession, even though we're not. If those topics are of interest to you, head on over to YouTube and search for Gather and Go, or grouptravelleader.com/podcast. Pull up the page for this episode and the video will be embedded right there. Now, I want to take a minute and recap a few of the things Anna said that I thought were super important because I don't want you to miss these data points. When we were talking about why experiences, and especially travel experiences, are still popular even in the face of a softening spending environment, Anna said there are certain people that are driving that trend. We dub them super spenders. They are people who are prioritizing travel and experiences over other people and categories. She went on to say, we call them explorers because they're not the average tourist. They really want to get into a destination. They want to experience life as much as possible. They want to connect with the world, with the destination, with others, with themselves. And travel is a really, really important way for them to do that. It sort of fulfills a higher purpose in life. She said these people aren't defined by age, sex, location, or ethnic background. It's a set of values that defines them and brings them together. I think this is such an important insight. And it should be really good news if you are a tour operator, a travel planner, someone selling or promoting travel, because it means that there is a sizable market out there of people who are traveling not just for fun, not just for stress relief, but traveling to fulfill a higher purpose in life. I love this, and I think this is the kind of person you should be targeting in the way you design your experiences, targeting in the way you market your experiences. These are the people who are going to travel with you, love what you do, spend money with you, and do it again and again. So if you're looking for the kind of customer you can really build a business on, these are the kind of people you want to be reaching. Now, when we were talking about why these explorers really value the research phase of their trip, Anna said, explorers are very involved in research. In fact, their trip starts not when they get on a plane, but when they decide to take a trip. That planning period, that inspiration period, is part of their vacation. It's emotional. They're looking at a lot of different resources. So it's important for you to be everywhere so that when they're ready to make a purchasing decision, you're on the list. I love this insight. I think Anna is exactly right. Research, inspiration, anticipation are all an important part of the overall satisfaction we get from travel. What this means for you is that you need to make sure that the process of researching a trip on your website or talking to you or someone from your company meets those expectations that people are bringing to the research phase. You want it to be just as colorful, just as beautiful, just as engaging, just as compelling as the actual experience of traveling with you is going to be on the road. And finally, when I asked Anna about how these super spenders perceive and calculate value, she said it's a losing game to compete on price. Yes, there is price sensitivity, but it comes down to a value question. If you can ensure that you're providing something of very high value, then people are actually prepared to pay more for it because vacation time is precious. People would rather spend a little more money on an experience they will remember forever versus one they won't. Now, my takeaway here is not that you should never offer an attractively priced product. My takeaway here is that you should focus on delivering the very most value you can for people's travel dollar. And if you can keep the price of the tour low, then that's all the better. But more important than the price tag is the amount of value you offer. If you offer incredible value, more than people were expecting, you are going to find that they are delighted with the experience, very happy to pay for the experience, very happy to maybe pay for an upgraded experience, or come back and do business with you again. Value beats price every day. Great stuff there from Anna Cashman. Well, one of the things I love about my role in the group travel industry is I get to talk to a lot of tour operators, group leaders, other people who are active in planning group travel. And recently I've been asking them, what is the biggest challenge facing you as a group travel planner today? And I've been surprised, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, but I've been surprised to hear just how consistent their answers are. There seems to be one huge challenge facing group tour planners today. And if you are part of the travel industry, a supplier, then you might be part of the problem. That's going to be the topic of today's Hot Minute. Yeah, that's right. The Hot Minute is the portion of the program where I take 60 seconds to give you my unfiltered views on an issue that's impacting tourism every day. And so today we're going to talk about the biggest challenge facing group travel planners and how you might be able to solve it. So let's put 60 seconds on the clock and get into it. The biggest issue facing group travel planners today is the lack of professionalism among travel industry representatives. Every tour operator I talk to tells me the same thing. I can't get anybody to call me back. And whether it's hotels, restaurants, attractions, or even CVBs, tour planners around the country are reaching out to travel sellers with legitimate business opportunities and hearing crickets in return. It's hard to express how difficult it makes it to plan a tour when you can't get vendors to quote prices or even to sign contracts. Maybe these people are overworked or under-resourced, or maybe younger generations just don't value responsiveness and professionalism. But whatever the problem is, today's tourism leaders are going to have to address it, or they're going to risk losing the group travel business for good. Well, that's the Hot Minute. That's how I see things anyway. Of course, as always, you're welcome to disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And hey, whether you agree or disagree, we would love to hear from you. You can send your thoughts, questions, excuses for why you don't return phone calls to podcast@grouptravelleader.com. I read every email that comes into that account. I love hearing from you. And hey, you never know. Your ideas might just be the topic of the next Hot Minute. While you're in the mood to give us some feedback, would you do me a big favor? Would you go to your favorite podcast playing app? Find Gather and Go there. If you haven't subscribed to the show already, then please do that now. While you're there, if you would leave us a review and give us a rating, that would be a huge help. And I'm so thankful to everybody who has done that so far. My thanks as well to Anna Cashman for joining us today. On the next episode, I'm going to bring you a really fascinating conversation with Garv Namit of Four Winds Tour and Travel. He's going to help us unpack the booming world of student group travel. That's a conversation you're not going to want to miss. Until then, though, remember this. At the end of the day, we're all on this trip together, so let's make it a good one. See you next time on Gather and Go. Gather and Go is hosted and executive produced by me, Brian Jewell. Our publisher is Mac Lacey. Danya Simmons is our creative director. Ashley Ricks is our circulation manager and graphic designer. Our sales team is Kyle Anderson and Talisa Reck. To advertise on the podcast, call Talisa at 859-253-0455. Gather and Go is a production of the Group Travel Leader. For more information about our magazines, podcasts, and events, visit us online at grouptravelleader.com. This episode was sponsored by Colette. Colette provides industry-leading benefits to group leaders of all kinds, from banks to families, from religious groups to garden clubs, and many more. It doesn't matter where your group has been, it matters where they'll go next. Head to gocollette.com/groups to learn more.